So we start this project off by cutting all of the pieces for the top down to their initial length. I then take these pieces over to the jointer and flatten one edge so that I can bring it over to the table saw and cut it to the appropriate size. Once those pieces are cut down to 6 inches wide, I run them on the jointer on one face so that I have a flat edge. Then I laid all the pieces out and marked them in the order that I wanted them. After that, I went over to the planer and planed them down to their final thickness and made sure to get all of the marks off from the sawmill. I noticed halfway through the glue up that I was not taking video, and so what you get is a couple pictures here, and this is the final look of the top. After that, it was on to cutting the legs. So I cut to initial length, and then I run one edge on the jointer. Here I'm making some marks to head over to the bandsaw, and I ended up getting 3 legs out of one of these large pieces. I chose to cut these on the bandsaw because the pieces were not perfectly level, and the bandsaw is much safer when your pieces are not nice and flat. Just like other steps, I then ran the pieces on the jointer, and immediately after that brought them over to the planer to plane down to their final thickness of 2 inches. Then I cut this angle. It's a 10-degree angle in 2 different directions so that the legs would splay out diagonally. I then referenced that angle and made a mark 2 inches down from the edge. And then I mark my tapers. And so the tapers, I decided not to use a jig and just to cut them by hand on the bandsaw. So I made my mark to cut them from 2 inches up at the top all the way down to 1 inch at the bottom. Since they were rough cut, I then needed to clean them up. To save some time rather than sanding the whole thing, I got out the hand plane and just cleaned up each of the edges that I cut on the bandsaw. Then after that, I needed some apron pieces to connect all the legs. And so I am cutting these here. These were cut all to 2 inches wide. The apron pieces just got a single 10-degree angle rather than that double angle that I cut on the legs. I made a little jig here so that I could drill the holes the same in all the apron pieces. I then inserted some dowels in a piece so that I could mark all of the legs. Once the legs were marked, I brought them over to the drill press, and I had the drill press set at 10 degrees so I could actually drill in at an angle. Once the fit was good, I sanded all the pieces so that they would be ready for glue up. Once that was glued and in clamps, I turned my focus back on the top. I hand planed some of the glue off and some of the imperfections from the glue up. And then, once it was flat, I used this straight edge to cut all the pieces and square up the table. This would have been a satisfying shot if it weren't for my arm. And then this was a fun feature on the table that we got to do. We actually tapered the bottom of the table. So it's a little feature that you don't really see unless you are looking, but it narrows the top and gives it a really sleek look. And then it has a 2-inch taper on the bottom. I did 2 different methods to get there because I was curious which would work better. First, I used the angle grinder, which I liked, but dust collection was difficult. And then second, I used a hand plane, and it is just fun to use a good sharp hand plane. Once I had those roughly shaped, I took the sander, the orbital sander, to them. This cleaned them up, and then I hand sanded a little bit as well. I spared you a bit of the sanding and just showed one grit on the bottom. But trust me, there is plenty of sanding. Then, once all the sanding was done, it was time for finishing. We sprayed on some General Finishes clear coat on this, and we're really happy with how it came out in the end. This is just one of 3 coats that we're going to show you in the video. Here's a final look at the table. It was a fun challenge making something in mid-century style, and we're really happy with the finished product. We thank you all for watching this video and for all your continued support.